76.
Hello and welcome along to episode 22 of the Tennis Asia podcast. And on this show, we will take a look back at an eventful Hong Kong Open. We'll look at titles for Aoi Ito and remarkably Chung, a final for Naomi Osaka, and also touch on the ongoing, almost completed Australian Open qualifying. And here to guide us through is Mr. Tennis Asia himself. Happy New Year, Eddie.
Happy New Year. And it's been a pretty good year so far for me personally. Obviously, I was in Hong Kong and spent, the end of 2024 and the beginning of this year in Hong Kong for the ATP 250 event. And it turned out to be a pretty eventful one and a pretty nice tournament as well. So, yeah, I've just about recovered from that.
Yeah, just hope your liver's recovered from that as well. And I wouldn't be getting on the measurement scale either for a little while. But we will start with Hong Kong. It was a tournament that saw a first ATP title go the way of a relatively unheralded French journeyman, Alexander Muller. I say unheralded because we did pretty much an hour-long show previewing the tournament just over a week ago, and I don't think we mentioned his name once.
No.
But in fairness to Muller, he actually decided to play the tournament on hard mode by going a set down in every single one of his games the entire week, up to and including the final. And in our rundown, I think we will start by talking about the week of his defeated final opponent. And that defeat notwithstanding, it was a very good week for Kei Nishikori.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for Kei, obviously, we know we've talked about it here, and everyone knows that the series of injuries that he's had, and obviously having been number 4 in the world back in 2015 for the first time, and doing that, of course, in the era of the big 3, the big 4. You know, that's what it was then, and yeah, I mean, you know how talented he was and is. But yeah, unfortunate with his injuries and coming into this, though, it ended 2024 fairly positively. You know, he played a number of tournaments and done pretty well. Obviously, quarters in Montreal, and then beating Tsitsipas along the way, and then winning the Challenger title at the end of last year. So he's coming, having had a good training block. I mean, I put up the article because we listened to the press conference. I was there before the tournament, and he's, talked about that, had a good pre-season, and yeah, everything was positive coming in. Felt okay physically, and tennis-wise, yeah, pretty good. He was pretty hopeful, and he said, that he was going to want to maybe aim for the top 50 if he was going to aim for anything in 2025. But yeah, actually, if we told him then that you're going to go all the way to the final, I think he would have probably taken it.
I mean, it wasn't an easy draw for him. Obviously, he started off against Shapo. I know that obviously Shapovalov wasn't at 100%. I think coming into the first round tie, he'd withdrawn from the doubles through illness, so maybe not 100%. But even so, a very tricky week through to that final.
Yeah, and that's how difficult it can be to come back when you don't have that ranking. I mean, he had to rely on the wild card to get into the tournament. Gets drawn against Shapovalov. Obviously, on paper, it's not the ideal first round opponent. And then, yeah, like you said, though, got a bit of luck in the sense, yeah, Shapovalov, he did turn out to play. He wasn't 100%. Clearly, he was flat. But Nishikori ended up winning that match 6-2, 6-2. I mean, obviously, yeah, he pulled out of the doubles Shapovalov before. And I kind of knew when that happened that something maybe was a bit serious because, being, media at the tournament, we get a little access to the practice court schedules that every day, or like, the current day and the next day. So, and I noticed that Shapo was not on any of them. So he must have been pretty sick. And
Right.
yeah, there was seemingly a bit of a virus going around in Hong Kong and in that maybe the tournament village there. So yeah, but for good start for Kei Nishikori. He did what he had to do. He served well, returned well. I mean, the return is key, isn't it, against a guy like Shapovalov? I mean, Shapovalov is a big lefty though as well, though. So I think for Nishikori with such a strong backhand, it's actually something he doesn't mind too much playing lefties. And yeah, that big, the swing and serve out wide isn't as effective for Shapo against a guy like Nishikori. And yeah, coming through that, obviously a great way to get through. Or I think it was actually 6-2, 6-3. But yeah, nonetheless, very, very good result. And then obviously he moves on to the second round and has to play Karen Khachanov. And of course, this was a big, big test. I mean, of course, he'd beaten Tsitsipas the year before, but he hasn't played too many guys. Obviously, Khachanov, former top 10, still around top 20. So yeah, the third seed here, and then obviously Nishikori was struggling at the beginning because he went down a set, and then he was down a break as well in that second set, but then comes back to win it 6-3. And eventually takes the final set 7-5. I mean, this was a great test for them because obviously after the first match, you're thinking, well, how good is he really, and what's his level at the moment? But yeah, being able to fight through and get through that one, that was a massive, perhaps his best match in the week, and just really nice to see him playing that well again. And yeah, it didn't get really any easier when he went into the quarterfinals. He had to play Cameron Norrie. Cam Norrie was
another three-setter.
Yeah, this time though it started off better for Nishikori with the 6-3 in the first set. But yeah, Cam Norrie was I think in that first set it just gave him a little chance. But on the whole, in those first two sets, Norrie was playing really well. I mean, he's just such an annoying player to play at the times because he just keeps getting the ball back and he's kind of awkward. Pretty fast surface, keeping the ball low. So he was, I think at some point during that second set, perhaps even into the beginning of the third, because there was a bit of pressure, I think, on Nishikori's first service game in that final set. You felt like maybe Cameron Norrie was going to get it done and actually win because I was feeling a bit concerned for Kei, but then Nishikori just stepped it up and he took his chances when he could take them, and he was in the end a deserved winner. He still hits the ball so well, and it was just a really nice performance in the end, and goes through. Doesn't really get any easier. Again, he has to play Jerry Shang.
No rackets coming into the crowd. You didn't get a chance to.
For Cam Norrie.
Yeah, I tell you what, that comes my way. I'm going home with that racket. There's no two ways around it. It's I'm going to say no. I'm fine. Nothing wrong. Do not default him. But I'm having it.
If he said so, he'd probably be like, fair enough. Yeah, okay, I'll take your racket. You can have it. But I mean, a player that we've not talked about, obviously, another important player from Asia for our podcast is Jerry Shang or Shang Jun Shang.
Right.
Yeah, right. And that is who Nishikori would end up meeting in the semifinals. But it was Shang who actually had to draw. He was drawn against Coleman Wong in the first round, but he actually, because I was present at the draw, and Shang, we talked about that last time, right? So he drew Wong out of the hat, and it was just funny because, everyone obviously there is from Hong Kong and they're finding it funny, but then also because Wong drew Shang out of the hat back in Shanghai a few months ago. And yeah, obviously a nice match to start off for the crowd. A lot of people were there to see both players. And for Wong, who we can maybe mention briefly, obviously the local player had a bit of an up and down 2024, has to come into this new season sort of bit rejuvenated. He's talked about having a good preseason. Not the easiest first round to draw Shang, obviously. He's moved up to the top 50, having a great season. last year, and but it went better for Wong. I mean, he ended up taking it to a tiebreak in that first
Right.
set. Shang eventually won that 7-3, but up to that point, there was really not much in it, and I don't think like Wong. I think he had a one break, one game maybe that he was down love 40 and then held. I mean, he was hitting a lot of aces actually, and the court the center court anyway was pretty quick, and the balls were quick. The players were commenting on that. I mean, I've heard Shang and Nishikori mention that, and they were saying it was very quick. I think, especially the balls. So, that was reflected in the ace count for some of these players. I mean, Wong, I think he hit 14 aces in that match. But yeah, Jerry Shang goes on and gets the break in the second set to win it 6-4. So it was closer than the last match. I think the last match was 6-4, 6-4. But yeah, definitely more competitive this time from Wong's perspective. But Shang, yeah, was happy to get through that one. And then he goes on to play Pedro Martinez in the second round, Shang, and
Right.
just it was a clinic really, 6-3, 6-1, because he played Pedro Martinez before on the clay and lost twice. But I mean, yeah, different sort of surface here, different speed now. So and he went through to the quarterfinals and played Fabian Marozsan. Now I think by this point we've talked about the viruses going around. Shang was also a victim of it. He talked about having a fever after that match against Marozsan. I mean, he definitely had the sniffles. There's no doubt he had something. So, but yeah,
Did he say even before that match? Didn't he sort of wake up at 2:00 in the morning of that match with a?
He said at 1 a.m. he had a fever and he woke up. He was thinking whether to play, but then he did play. But then, I mean, I think that's why he was quite flat in the first set. He lost that one 6-1.
6-1.
Marozsan's a good player, of course. I mean, he just beat Rublev in the second round, and he's beaten.
And actually, I can't let that go. Who did he beat in the previous round?
Andrei Rublev, Marozsan.
Andre Rublev. That's it. Yes. Just tuning into that press conference. Yeah, Rublev, like a schoolmaster. Yeah, Rublev. What about Anyway, carry on.
So Marozsan, but Shang came back actually well in those two sets. Was going pretty big on the forehand, and that forehand can be so effective, and it is a weapon. And actually, it did well to come through that one, because I mean, you're thinking he wasn't going to be able to do it, but yeah. So I mean, that was a good effort him to get through that. But then when it came down to the semi-final against Nishikori, I think the virus was taking its toll, and unfortunately, that semi-final with Nishikori up on serve at 4-3, Shang decided to retire, and it looked a bit sudden, and people were wondering, like, is he really like that sick? Because he was like smiling afterwards and saying like, I'm sorry, and sorry, I just have to pull out because I'm sick, and it's a miracle I'm actually even standing here. But I mean, I think he was sick, but I do wonder whether they also have to consider, like, they don't want to run themselves into the ground.
What's coming up? A long flight ahead, and a very, very big couple of weeks ahead. Yeah.
And then when he came out, actually, when he was playing, it was clear that he was really just trying to get it done as quick as possible, because he was just absolutely, without any care, he was going for big shots. And I think it was surprising the crowd, but also Nishikori as well. But I mean, at the same time, he's going big on those shots, but he wasn't chasing down balls. So you felt like he wasn't really prepared for that battle out there. And he just, I think, he just sort of realized, like, he's not going to be able to do this. So, and that just put Nishikori into his first final in 6 years since Brisbane 2019, which is, it's quite shocking, really. I mean, because he's had, I think, since then he's had good performances in various tournaments. Maybe not obviously won any titles, but in bigger tournaments as well. But obviously the injuries have played a part there, and the extended periods out. And nonetheless, I mean, it's been a good week for him. I mean, coming through guys, Shapovalov, Kashanov, Nori, and Shang, you're saying just to be able to get through that and be in the final is great. But then you're thinking, well, he has to play in the final Alexandra Müller, who was, coming into this ranked within the 60s in the rankings. And, he's never won an ATP title before. I think he'd been in one final before on
one final in 2023. Yeah,
and that was on clay. So this is it was a quicker hard court, and for Muller, boy, he had a tough time getting to the final. I mean, he lost the first set, as you said, in every match against. I mean, Huesler, that's Mark Andrea Huesler from Switzerland, and then Kecmanovic, and he had to play two tie breaks, the three long sets actually, because he lost the first set 7-5, and then the two tie breaks, the latter of which he won 12-10, and then coming back from a set down against Arthur Fils, his countryman, another guy that's obviously really talented, and then in the semi-finals against a guy who's maybe surprising to get to the semi-finals, Jaume Munar from Spain. He came back from a set down. That I saw that match and I was present because that was on the centre court, of course, and that was actually quite an entertaining match. I remember someone sitting behind me the day before in the quarterfinal complaining, and it's like, it's going to be like it's just a challenger match that we got through the semi-final. But then Muller against Munar actually was really a good match, right? So I was good for the crowd to be able to get that, because obviously the other semi-final was the retirement.
Yeah.
And then they did have the Rublev and Kashanov, who were still in the doubles to look forward to. So that was good. And they had a good match and beat the top seeds. So yeah, that was something that was at least the crowd had something there. And then, yeah, obviously going into the final, you are hopeful for Nishikori. But I did say, I don't know if you saw that little talk with the girls from Hong Kong that I met. Yeah, on that video. Yeah. Just, I mean, I remember thinking, because we were looking forward to it, and I remember thinking like, well, given Muller's weakness so far, and the fact that he's never won a title, he's going to be really motivated, right? And sometimes it comes down to that.
Yeah.
Nishikori perhaps being expected to win for the first time in the week as well. You know what I'm saying? Coming into each match. I mean, I don't think he was necessarily favorite before going into any of these previous matches. So, or certainly not as a clearer favorite as might be before playing a guy like Muller. But it started off really well for Nishikori. He won that first set 6-2, and yeah, he played tremendously well. And some of those backhands we were firing up the line, I was sitting there with some of the photographers around me, and they're usually busily taking photos, but even they had to just say something like, wow, look at that, so it was really good. But then in the second set, just completely different. I mean, Nishikori, I think he wasn't getting as much free points in the first serve, or easier points, and then Muller came back into it. He raised his level. And Muller, actually, if we looked at the stats for the week in terms of aces and points won in the first serve, he'd be doing really well, Muller. He has got a good serve. He's got quite aggressive game. He likes to come into the net sometimes. So, it was a completely different match. And then Nishikori had some pressure at the start of the third set, but he came through that well. So I thought, oh, maybe we've got a good set in our hands here. But then eventually, I think it was actually 2 breaks that Muller got. He broke to actually win that final set. And for Nishikori, I think he'd mentioned himself that he didn't play that bad. I mean, even in that final set there was definitely some good play, but from his perspective, I think he started to feel tight. I think obviously the pressure and the expectation, it's been such a long time. Not only first final, would have been his first title in 6 years. So, I mean, that's kind of understandable, isn't it? Whereas from Muller's perspective, he'd already lost the first set every match. So
yeah,
and then he just coming back, he must have been thinking, yeah, I've got to go for it here. And
You don't want to jinx it by winning the first set in the final, do you? I
it
think that
hurt.
what.
Go on.
No, I was just talking about Nishikori. I know he said sort of. I read the article on the site. Do go to the site, by the way, tennisasiamedia.com. And I think Nishikori was saying that he wants to get to the level where he's playing the new generation of top guys, like to be in the position where he gets into the same tournaments as them and gets to play against them. What do you think of the prognosis on that?
Well, I mean, I think even by his own admission, he's a bit off getting to. I mean, his coach Thomas Johansson apparently thinks that Nishikori can still compete with anyone on his day. I think Nishikori's a bit more,
Circumspect.
cautious in terms of like I think he can compete with top 10 players, but there's sort of that the top. You're talking the really top guys, and he mentioned them specifically: Alcaraz, Sinner. They're kind of a level above at the moment, and even that top five, you've got like Zverev and stuff. That's obviously tough. And that's maybe he can compete with him, but I think for him, he said that you talk about Sinner and Alcaraz, he hasn't played against them, so that's something that's keeping him going. He wants to test himself against those players, and he has practice, I believe, with Sinner and some guys like Runa, and he said that was really really helpful for him to sort of feel just the level that they're playing at, because he said with the last few years that he's had injuries and been off and on away from the tour, the game has changed. Now guys are absolutely, the power that they've got is quite tremendous. And Nishikori is a ball striker. He's got a tremendous talent. He doesn't have let's say quite the natural power that they've got, but he's definitely someone that's capable of dominating with his speed of thought as well as his actual strokes. So I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, he's now up to, after losing the final, he's now up to 74 this week in the rankings. So he was outside the top 100. That's already pretty good going, considering he just said before the tournament that he's aiming for top 50. I mean, he's got like halfway there. So going to be interesting to see. I mean, now he does have that entry into the Australian Open by using the protected ranking. So he is there, and I think it's going to be great to see him. See if he, obviously, best of five is different, physically, and that's something that maybe was a bit of a concern. But I mean, I did ask him. I was like, you've come through 5 matches here, and you came through 5 matches at the end of last season. So do you feel more confident to sort of take on that physical challenge of that? And he did, he was aware. I mean, it's going to be a different physical challenge, but he was saying, the positives was that, he came through this tournament and he doesn't have any real physical issues. So just, so that's obviously bodes well, and he feels good about his tennis. So he was pretty miserable, as you would be after the final, but yeah. That's
okay,
just
before we leave Hong Kong, or briefly, we better talk. Buyan Chalketti, I think he got 1 set off Nuno Borges. That was as good as it got for him. But one thing I think you mentioned about what Kei Nishikori said at the end. Obviously, you've got to find you've had a good week. I think did he say something like this is a 500 masquerading as a 250. The setup of the week was really, really good. It was a really, really well run, well organized event.
He actually said something more dramatic. He said that it's more like a Masters to him. I think in terms of what he's looking at it from the perspective of the way the players are being treated and the way it's been run and organized. So that obviously great praise for the tournament. I mean, he was never going to be too harsh about the tournament. He was getting the wild card, and I'm sure they treated him nicely and stuff. I heard the food is pretty good. Obviously it's a 250. It's fairly small setup. They're not short on money, you know, the Hong Kong tournament, and they've, and I think, yeah, it is I was pretty impressed with how well it was run, seeing it from the inside, and I was pretty happy overall with everything. So, yeah, high praise from him. And I did ask Alexander Muller actually whether what his thoughts. I mean, what Kei said, and at first he thought I was just saying like the quality of the fields, like a Masters, and I had to be like, no, I mean he meant like he just meant like the organization. And then, but no, he was just, well, he had no complaints. He's just like, I've got nothing to say. It was perfect from his point of view. I mean, he was maybe not played as many ATP events, but he's certainly played quite a few. He's been, at the sort of ATP, enough tournaments at level to have an opinion. So yeah, he was happy with it. So yeah, I mean, obviously that's good. I mean, let's see if the tournament's going to be there for a few more years, and hopefully it keeps going.
I'll try and remind myself to renew my visa a little bit quicker next year, so I can actually leave the country temporarily. Let's move on from Hong Kong, and we'll stay on the men's side, but we're going to move down a couple of levels. And I don't think we expected to start 2025 by talking about a victory, maybe even in a match for Chung Hyun, let alone victory in a tournament. But in the latest of the series of ITFs in Bali, for once, the draw gods smiled on him because they've been extremely unkind to him in recent tournaments. And remarkably, Chung Hyun went all the way to the final, ultimately avenging a defeat from the previous week against Swindon's finest, Giles Hussey. Chung Hyun, tournament winner.
Yes, Chung Hyun, who of course famously got to the semi-finals in 2018 at the Australian Open. Incredible to think that's 7 years now.
7 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously beat Djokovic and incredibly beat Medvedev, Djokovic, and Zverev in that run. So yeah, ridiculous. But then we know similar but worse situation as when compared to Nishikori in terms of the series of injuries. But it was a happier start to 2025 for him. Yeah, there's a series of 3 ITF events, the 2 15Ks, and then in the first of the 2025 season is a 25K. All of them in Bali, Indonesia, lovely place to have an event. But yeah, first 2 events he lost in the first round. In terms of the draw that he was getting, it wasn't particularly kind to him. He did take a set in that first tournament, but lost it in 3. And then against Giles Hussey, is one of the higher ranked players he could played. He lost in straight sets, 4-6, 4-6. So coming into this tournament, got a kind of start, like he said. It was a qualifier. I think a teenager still, 18 or 19, right?
Tamida, yeah.
Yeah. So a guy ranked lower than him, so that helped. But then it ended up being a tremendous run for him because he came to that in straight sets, and then in the next round in straight sets, another teenager, I think. But then quarterfinals, toughest test yet against Antoine Escoffier, who actually played in Seoul Challenger that I was at last year, and he actually beat the guy that beat Chung. He beat Lee too, I think, in that tournament.
That's right,
yeah, and so Escoffier ranked 207 in the world at the time of this match, which is very high for a low ITF event. That's you'd expect that ranking in challengers and decent challengers. So yeah, but Chung remarkably wins in straight sets 6-2, 6-2. The Aussie in the semi-finals, he got taken to 3 sets. But then, like he said, Giles Hussey, who is around 400 in the world, he came through no problem, 6-1, 6-2 for Chung. And just to be able to come through 5 matches and get the results, even if it's at this 25K level. But then have a couple of guys in there which are sort of challenger level, then
and coming through a three set match as well. Because I
yeah,
think
given
we've
what
said watching him over the past few months, he can hang with anyone for a set, but then the sort of maybe the aches and the pains and that, and just the fact that you're not in that rhythm of consistently playing matches, the longer the match
yeah,
goes on, the harder it is.
yeah, and I think he talked as well about just I think because I remember against Lee Two in that challenger, he talked about
Mm.
he's up a set and then he couldn't sort of maintain it, but it's a mental thing as much as anything. You're just not used to being in those situations and playing those match important points regularly. And then that's something that maybe affected, going back to Nishikori in Hong Kong. He's saying like, it's been a long time since he's been in that situation where he's actually like thinking he's going to win. So, I mean, it's sort of can play a little bit on you, but yeah, obviously a great week, and it's just a really nice story for Chung to finally get a title under his belt. And then there was also that thing that I read, I posted about on the Twitter about how the Sung Hee Park, the ex
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
WTA player, actually is a sports psychologist now and was actually guiding him for quite a while, even through his rehab and through this tournament. So apparently, it's been useful to have that. I mean, sports psychologist, I think, is something that a lot of players use these days, right? But I think, yeah, it's probably tough, particularly for Chung, having to come. He was playing at such a high level and
Yeah.
so many injuries now to come back through here. So, yeah, that's good for him, and we'll see where he goes next. Hopefully, back to the challenger level. Maybe someone will give him a wild card. Although,
So ranking
he
wise, what does that do for Chung?
yeah, I mean, he was
That's
at
got to be a big leap.
1,107 in the rankings, and now after it updates the ITF levels tournaments, sometimes they take like a little bit of time to add to the ATP rankings, but on the live ranking he's now 725, so that's going to be updated at some point, maybe next week. So 725 is, I mean, that's certainly going to get him into more ITFs, main draws, and then potentially even qualifiers, depending on if you get withdrawals or the quality of the tournament. But yeah, I mean, just the fact that he's won this tournament, I mean, there might be more tournaments, events willing to give him a wild card into a challenger. So yeah, let's see what happens.
Great start to 2025. Also, a great start to 2025 was over in the Canberra International. Moving on to the women's side now, WTA 125 event. Aoi Ito, she won, and she didn't drop a set the entire week.
Yes, and we've talked about her so much, and her style of tennis bamboozles her opponents. And after having it ended last year so well, that was that 100 title in Takasaki.
Mm.
And then, coming in and winning her biggest title to date, it's a 125, WTA 125. Didn't drop a set all week, and even beating the number one seed, Parisis Diaz, and then coming through against a player who's also been similarly rising through the rankings, China's Wei Sijia. So she beat her 6-4, 6-3 in the final. Yeah, and that is obviously, when she's playing well, she's a handful for most of these players. And I mean, that puts her up to 109 in the WTA rankings. Yeah, highest to date. So getting very close to that top 100. Unfortunately for her, after winning that title, then she had to go all the way to Melbourne. And I think, the change in conditions is it's different conditions there. And obviously she was drawn in the Australian Open qualifying draw, but she was drawn against her compatriot, Sayaka Ishii, who is actually a year younger than her and someone that she's very familiar with.
Yeah.
A player that they played doubles together before a few times. And in a way, that's actually ended up being like a bit of a bad draw for her, because Ishii herself, she has a bit of power that, Ito lacks. And obviously that's why Ito partly plays the way that she does is that she can, use her intelligence of play and
Right.
unpredictability to get past maybe more powerful opponents. But I don't think it helped having to go to Melbourne and then playing against someone who knows her so well. So Aisha would know like how she plays and
Right.
what to expect. And
What
she started
and what you
well.
need to do to beat her, yeah.
Yeah, and Ishii started well. Ishii, to her credit, I mean, obviously she's younger. She's a player with potential. Uh, she started that first set 6-3, and I think in Ito, she definitely did better because I did watch the match. She did better. Unfortunately, she did start to get into a rhythm, but then eventually, after she got up 4-3, so she was ahead, but then just I think she was up a break, but then just lost the next 3 games. So in the end, it was a deserved win for Ishii. Just a bit unfortunate for Ito because obviously, I mean, I don't think you obviously go and win that title, but it's just sometimes tennis is tough like that. Because it would have been great to see her in Melbourne in the main draw, but I think a lot of people, in the wider tennis world, they probably not even seen her play. It'd be good for them to see her play as well. But at 109 in the rankings now, I can't imagine she's got too many points to defend at the beginning part of the year. I think it's sooner rather than later she's going to be in the slams and probably not going to be great. I was going to say probably
Like
not great.
The sort of issue it does sort of give you the idea about when she does come up against the top, are they just going to be able to just blow straight through her? That would be the question.
Well, yeah, I mean she's going to have to adjust to that, but I mean, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Like, the next slam obviously is quite a while away. It's going to be Roland Garros as well, which I don't think she's going to be so good there. But then maybe Wimbledon is we might see her do something. So let's see what happens, and then I'm still hopeful for her year, and getting up to that into that sort of WTA, the fringes at least.
Is she herself? I think is out of qualifying. We'll return to the qualifying in just a moment. I do just want to mention one thing. I did see a tweet of yours. Bangkok, or Nonthaburi as they call it, is ongoing at the moment, and I see our old friend Benoit Paire was beaten in 3 sets by Maximus Jones, born in Sydney but representing Thailand, and I think he's still going.
So Maximus Jones, that's in the Nonthaburi Challenger. He's a guy that I actually watched last year. I mean, he's so like he said, he's born in Sydney, but I think he lives in Thailand. He's grown up he's been in Thailand for a while, so yeah, he represents Thailand, and I guess he's half Thai as well. So, just like he's a player that I saw, like, because I was actually at Nonthaburi just for one day for the Challenger last year, and he beat Marco Cecchinato, and I think he lost the next round, but he also beat like Donskoy in that little run of tournaments. But then he kind of disappointed for the rest of the year, in terms of like not doing much, even that much on the ITF tour. But I mean, starting off here, he's still only 20, but yeah, beating Paire from a set down. And then knocking out the
I can
top
just
seed.
imagine. I didn't see any of the game, but I can just imagine how well that went down.
So Paire didn't take it well. I mean, Paire won that first set tiebreak, and then Jones came back 6-3, 6-4, and then he apparently steamrolled the top seed Sue, the first top seed. So 6-2, 6-1, and then tomorrow he'll have to play Ryo Noguchi. So it's going to be interesting. See if he can keep that up, because that's obviously, if he can go further, that's going to propel him quite a bit up the rankings. And I always think like it's funny because with some players, maybe they need that sort of to play these big guys and sort of realize their level, and then they have one good week, and maybe that can be the turning point that's going to kickstart their sort of careers and get it going. Some guys it just takes a while, and I think it's still one to keep an eye on with Joe. I mean, and it's also got a really cool names like Maximus Jones.
Yes, yeah.
um,
Speaking of Thailand, there is only, I think, in singles at least, there is only going to be one Thai representative in the Australian Open, either men's or women's. Kasidit Samarich, of course, won the Asia Wildcard tournament to get in. I might add that's one more than there is Koreans participating. And we don't really want to say too much about the qualifying because there's still one round to go. It'll all be done this time tomorrow. Anything caught your eye in qualifiers so far? I know Coleman, he made it through one round, but that was it.
Yeah, I mean, Coleman Wong, he got through against Popko, but then got handsomely beaten today by Fonseca, which, I mean, Fonseca's just been beating everyone recently. So
he's doing it in Uchijima, isn't he? He's on 12, 13 now or something?
yeah, he's on several consecutive wins because obviously he had the wins in the next gen finals. He won 5 matches there against tough opponents, and then Canberra Challenger won the title there without a set dropped. Beat tough guys like McDonald and Farnley in the semi-finals. Obviously, he's won so many matches on the at the challenger level, and then came through Fonseca 6-4, 6-love, and then 6-love, 6-3 against Wong. I would be very surprised if he doesn't get through and possibly even win a couple of rounds in the main draw. It depends who he gets drawn against. But I mean, the guy is obviously extremely talented. But if we're going to talk generally about the Australian Open qualifiers, in terms of Asian players, there's not too many that have got to the final round, but 2 that have on the women's side. Now Hubino, she will face off against Harriet Dart in that final qualifying round. So that's an interesting little matchup there. I don't know. That's actually potentially one of the ones to watch. And then also we've got Wei Sijia against Stojanovic. Now Wei is actually going for her first slam main draw. She reached the same stage last year. Feeling pretty good about her chances this time though. So that could be a story there to see. She came through against Korpash in straight sets today. So that's good. And then from the men's side, again, not too many, but I think the story that stands out is Hedi Habib of Lebanon. He will have to play Clément Chidek of France, and actually another one that's going to be. I mean, we talked about he just had his first challenger title recently, Habib, just at the end of 2024. So for him to start off this with getting into the Australian Open would be big news. He actually beat Jason Shang in the second round there. And then also we have Yasutaka Uchiyama, a veteran really now, and but he's got to play American Mitchell Kruger. Good chance for him to get through. And those are the 2 on the men's side, but positive in the sense I think they've both got good chances. So we potentially could have maybe 3 or 4. I mean, Hibino against Dart is sort of, for me, it's a tricky tie, isn't it, for Hibino's point of view? But potentially 3 or 4 getting through. So that wouldn't be too bad from the qualies. And once that's done, we can preview the actual main draw. That's going to be so interesting.
So obviously, and just before we go, obviously, the Australian Open is going to dominate the month. But before the month's out, there is also Davis Cup to take our attention. A couple of squads have been announced recently. Japan against Great Britain is going to be I think the big one as far as we're concerned. Japan has announced its squad this week, and it's a pretty strong one.
Yep. So Japan, yeah, they've got Nishioka, Taro Daniel, Kei Nishikori, um, and we've got Yosuke Watanuki, right? And finally, Takeru Yuzuki, who is the doubles player and one that recently won with his Japanese partner. He won the wild card into the Australian Open, so he will be playing in the Australian Open. Yosuke Watanuki went out, but yeah, really solid singles players there, isn't it? Yoshihito Nishioka, Daniel, and Nishikori. And, Watanuki, probably you're picking Nishikori as the number one at the moment, aren't you? And then just depending on the matchups, you're going with the others. But then, yeah, and having a proper doubles player in there yeah, and then obviously GB, they are weakened without Draper, but Cam Norrie, Farnley, Billy Harris, and Skupski. So it's going to be still a chance for Great Britain. So still quality there. So it could be a little interesting tie. And then obviously,
are you going to go? It's in Kobe, I think. Are you going?
I don't think I'm going to be able to make it, but
No.
I would, even though I'd love to. But yeah, the other one is obviously Chinese Taipei. They're familiar side in terms of familiar faces. You've got Jason Shang, Wu Tongling, Xu Yu Shou, Huang is the doubles player, and Reiho. So
they'll be facing the United States, right?
Yeah, and they're at home though to the United States, so that could get interesting. Could they actually get through? Because USA's team is Alex Mickelson. Mickelson's been really good recently, so you'd expect them to win there. But the other players, Marcus Giron and then Mackenzie McDonald, doubles players Raji Fram and Austin Krajicek. The beauty of Davis Cup is that it's you never know what's going to happen unless the guys are outright favorites. Big difference in level. Things can happen, especially when you've got that doubles in the middle. And then obviously Korea. That's actually big news. Korea, because Kwon Soon-woo has been announced in the Davis Cup team. There was some doubt about whether him or the other guys in the military. So it's him, Kwon, and Chung Yoon Sung, and Hong Sung Chan. Hong Sung Chan as well, the number one player from Korea, all off to the army at the same time. They've enlisted, or they will be enlisting next week on the 13th of January. But Kwon has the permission to join the national team, and players that are doing military service, sports players, they do have the possibility of playing the national team events and some domestic tournaments. So Kwon is joining. It's a big boost for the Davis Cup team because they have to play Czechia, who, they've got a really strong team. And then, Chung Yoon Sung is important because he is a good doubles player and he can play with Nam. And then also you've got Gerard Campagna Lee, who's the Barcelona-born player who has opted to play for Korea. He does have Korean citizenship as well. So
is that a first-time call-up?
First-time call-up for Gerard Campagna Lee, who has played like 95% of his tournaments on clay, but this is an indoor hard court tournament, so it'll be interesting to see if he's able to make the adjustment. But obviously Korea lacking in depth, they'll take it, I think, and nice for him to get that first call-up. I don't know how good his Korean is.
So this is great for Kwon as well, because as far as I'm aware, the first 6 weeks of military service is boot camp, and boot camp in January in this temperature is not very pleasant. So it's nice on a nice indoor hardcore instead of like crawling through some snow somewhere. That's certainly a big bonus. Okay, well, there to look forward to at the end of the month. We'll try and do something on the Australian Open once the main draw comes out. We'll try to do something on the Asian interest in that. But any other business this evening?
Well, you didn't even mention Naomi Osaka.
Oh, I didn't, did I? No. Got to the final in New Zealand, yes.
Yeah, that thing. So obviously similar story to Kei, in that, it'd been a long time for Naomi. Different circumstances, and that she'd taken her time out from because she had a kid and everything. But yeah, obviously former world number one, and she'd been struggling last year to get back. Still a great week for her, very similar to Kane getting to the final in Auckland, but then ultimately having to retire in the final against Clara Sawson after being up a set, apparently the abdominal issue. I mean, obviously one eye on the upcoming Australian Open. It makes sense that you don't want to aggravate something when they've literally got, about a week or actually just a few days now, right? Isn't it, till the tournament? Just like now at this point, or at the time of the tournament, it was about a week, right? From Sunday. So, yeah, I mean, she came through 3 of the matches in straight sets, and she came back from a set down against Hailey Baptiste at a quarterfinal. That was the one set she dropped that tiebreak, but then won the second 6-1, 6-2. Really positive week for her in that sense. So, yeah, just obviously disappointing that she has to retire, because it was a similar thing against Coco Gauff. She, they won 1 set each in that round of 16 match in Beijing. Obviously a big tournament, and she was just getting into a rhythm, starting to pick up good results. Obviously, if you win a set against Coco Gauff, you're playing pretty well, but then that obviously ended as well. So just unfortunate for her. Just she's going to have these fitness issues in her return, but let's see. I mean, I think she's going to be okay for the Australian Open, so we'll see what happens. Nonetheless, you have to say a pretty good week for Japanese tennis, maybe with just a little bit of disappointment. Obviously, we had finalists Nishikori and Osaka, then Aoi Ito winning a title, but then failing to qualify for the Australian Open. But overall, a pretty good week for Tennis Asia. I mean, with Hyeon Chung winning that title as well, you have to say it's pretty nice.
A positive start to 2025, and lots of contenders. We did the 10 for 24 just a couple of weeks ago. Lots of early contenders to make the top 10 of 2025 already. When is the Aussie Open draw? The main draw, is it Friday?
It happens actually tomorrow once the qualies.
It is tomorrow, as soon as qualies done, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and
we'll be into it very, very soon. Lots to look forward to. Thank you very much for joining me this evening, and enjoy the last day of the qualies, and lots of preparation to do for the Australian Open.
Cheers.